batteries in the smoke detector, fix the door, the lock or whatever. So I think I don't know if we were to outsource that and not that instant gratification, they're not going to feel taken care of.
Right.
I think they can understand that we have to schedule out a roof. But I don't know.
So a lot of those cases, I mean, depending on the property and what the people's living situation is, you'll probably have keys to the house.
Right, exactly.
Especially up in,
Right.
Litchfield.
The second homes and stuff. Yeah. So those are the things, and we're kind of doing more of a model of like healthcare. So you pay like it's a premium,
Right.
and then each time we come out, it's copay. So it subsidizes it. You want to control that they're not it for the handyman side. Like you don't want them to, overuse. You need a little bit of a trigger so that we're not going out there.
See, that's where he was explaining it to me, and my sense is if it needs a explanation, if it needs a 10-minute talk to explain how it works, like insurance does, it's become too complex. Yeah. If it's like, you're going to pay a monthly fee,
right,
like you do at the country club. Any of your, things, disposables that we need to buy,
right,
batteries for the
right,
smoke detectors,
we'll
we'll charge you for that.
Yeah.
Any service that you need, snow plowing,
right,
any of that, gets charged as you go. But
right.
And then the major items as they get
right. Yeah, so I think it's interesting because you are right. You got to I tend to overthink, but yeah, let's jump in. Chris, you're back on for the next. This is the first guest to come on, number 2, and I'm excited because obviously we have a lot to talk about in the remodeling industry and the building, and I think what we decided on talking about was, new construction, which is, we went into lengths of the issue with, housing. It's
right.
just like, it, you're an agent, you're out there trying to help people find homes. They can't find homes. And I think, when we touched on this before was like, there's some people that are set up to go and build a house, but most people are like just terrified of it. Rightly so. I mean,
right.
There's a lot of horror stories out there, and honestly, it's only a couple bad players that got behind They didn't know what they were doing. They kind of, bad things happened to them, and
TV makes it look easy.
Yeah. And so most contractors out there want to do the right thing. But I think as somebody, the client, what I want to do today is, the client needs to be educated a little bit too. You cannot just rely on whoever you're bringing in and just set it and forget it, because they need you. If you're educated on the process of building a home, you're going to be able to help them do their job, because it's your home. It's not their home. You need to be an active participant in this thing. So I think for the next 35, 40 minutes, let's talk about new construction. Where does it start? Where, and you've been a builder, you've built some beautiful houses in this area. We're on the Litchfield County, New Haven County, this side of the state of Connecticut. You've been a builder. You're also a realtor that has so you're seeing all of the ways of moving in and starting the process. So what do you, where are you from? Well, what
Chris Haggerty, Around Town Real Estate.
Yeah.
Been a builder for over 30 years, built over 100 new homes, and been a realtor for over 5 years now. Do you want to talk about how someone builds a house hiring a builder, or do you want to talk about someone building a house on their own?
We can maybe do both.
The easiest way to go about it is, you hire a realtor like myself,
right?
Know kind of what you want for a house. We find a property for you, and then I connect you to a builder, and there's a handshake that goes on, and you work with them. But But if someone wants to build a house, I've always said that anyone can build a house. There's a recipe to it. If you can follow a recipe and you have some guidance, anyone can build a house. But the reality of how that product compares to someone who does it professionally, the first house I built was my own house, and that was back in '91, and my father-in-law helped me do it, but it took much longer than it should have, probably cost more than I could have built that house for 10 years later.
Right.
But
so you would say that's a skill level 10. Maybe let's go with, if we have time, get into that, but let's start with a builder, because honestly, and maybe some of it is going to be, well, you can't find a builder and maybe you need to take on the next,
True.
jump into that. So what is the first steps? What would be, they contact you, I think, because obviously you need a realtor,
right,
for the land. So what is that? What does that look like?
Really, the beginning part of it is you have to know what you want and be able to make decisions. You have to know kind of what style house you want. You have to know roughly where you want to live, and definitely know your budget.
Right. Huge thing is budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you start by working with a realtor, looking for a piece of property. Now, some houses, you may have one house in mind, but the lot doesn't work for that kind of house.
Right.
So you have to have a little bit of flexibility in there. But
so meaning, like, if you wanted a ranch, you've got this, it's a big sprawling, foundation, and your setbacks of your property might not be conducive to that. So then you might have to go to more of a colonial where you get the same square footage, but you're
or if you want a house that has a garage under and you're looking at dead flat pieces of property,
yeah, it's good.
It's not going to work.
Right.
But have a little understanding for that, have a little flexibility, but ideally know what you want, and be a little open to compromise in it. But then if you can find a piece of lot, a piece of property that works, and again, budgets need to factor into that. Used to be that a third and then it was a quarter of the final number that you could afford. Let's say 500.
Right.
If you were going to build a $500,000 house, no more than 100,000 of that could be the land.
Okay.
And that was just a rule of thumb that we had
right
20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago.
Gotcha.
Now it's a sixth. So if you're building a $600,000 house, it needs to be $100,000 for the land.
Gotcha.
So if you're out there looking at property that's 150, 200,000, and you can't afford $1 million house,
right, you're
at it wrong.
That's a good ratio, and I think it's these little tricks and numbers are going to save a ton of time.
And that's where getting the right realtor.
Right.
Not all realtors will understand that
right.
or know that.
Right.
So getting the right realtor that can then connect you with a builder, and knowing, if, like, I've got multiple builders that I work with, and knowing each of their schedules and who's better to work with.
Right.
A custom home or at least a pre-sold home.
Right. And so when they're looking for land, though, how many you think listings out there? Typically, you're not going to have or know what size home you can put on there, right? I mean, there's developers out there that maybe are selling lots that have already hey, you can put a 2,500 square foot house on this, or it's, but what do you see out there? That's not the normal, right?
Well, I think any lots that have been divided or created in the last 5 years, you can put pretty much any house on.
Right.
There's a minimum square that a lot of towns use that allows you a certain size footprint, and it's, in some towns it's 200 by 200. So
right.
You've got 40,000 square feet that you can work with at a minimum for that lot. So you can put pretty much anything in there.
Right.
But
a
lot of times you'll see, they call them paper houses, where the house hasn't been built yet, but it's being advertised, and the developer has plans ready. And in a lot of cases, that's probably the quickest way to get a newly built home or a new home, is to buy one of those and go through the process with them.
But that's not. I mean, when you look at listings, how many do you think? Because there's the thing is the big issue here is that there's not only so many builders,
right?
And they're not. You have some big players, Toll Brothers, Carrier, but most of the guys aren't doing one or two, or a small little 5, 10. So when somebody's looking for, hey, I got this piece of property that's just a separate property. I mean, how many builders do you think in the area are they going to be able to get on that list for?
Yeah,
because
it's
almost
competitive.
It's a custom home, really, right? And
it is and it isn't. If you're buying a someone's stock home, which in my experience, a lot of them were plans I was already doing. You changed maybe the kitchen layout, or you changed fixtures, or finishes, things like that. But in most cases, it was my house, and sometimes you just have you have to remind people that they're buying your house, you're not building theirs, and there's a difference. That they can't be, you give them specs, and they can't be choosing everything in there. It just, the math doesn't work, and the timing, it would take forever for someone to pick, everything in the spec list.
So I think that's an important fact in there when you're picking a builder. The actual entire transaction is going to be better if the builder is familiar and he's bringing, this is the plans I've built, X amount of homes like this. My framer knows how to frame this. My concrete, foundation excavator know how to lay this out really quick. Yep. I can do this for cheaper than if you go in there and you're telling me I've got to reinvent my process.
That's efficient both for the builder and for the buyer.
Right.
Because there's a handshake that takes place between subcontractors who worked together multiple times. My framer knew how my plumber wanted the walls in the bathrooms laid out.
Right.
So there's efficiencies there in buying a stock house or a house that a builder has done before.
Right. I mean, we're doing the one right now in Orange, and we waited another, I think close to a month, and probably it was too long, but the framing company had built the house like the exact layout 10 other times in New Jersey.
Perfect.
And it was worth it because they came in and they did half the time with no mistakes because they knew exactly what it was, and they came in way cheaper too.
Right.
Because it was, they had already all their cut lists and all of that stuff.
Yep.
So this is really good stuff. You don't, if you're going to go build a home, talk to the builder with what types of homes he likes to build.
Right.
And then maybe that's how you pick. And I think when we do this, it's like, listen, don't go and build a house and you need to move because, you're about to have a baby. Or your mom's kicking you out of your basement. Like, you cannot, this process is going to take time.
Right.
And if you want that new home, you need to take the time to then find the builder that builds your style home and what you want and get on their list, I think is probably.
Right. At a minimum, you're looking at 10 months to a year at the absolute quickest from signing on with someone, unless they've already got something going. And then realistically, if you're looking to do full custom, your print, your design, your lot, then you're looking at 2.
Yeah. And then find the builder that's willing to do the custom too, because it's that fit. If there's the builders out there that likes a certain type of house and they know how to put it together and they have all the crews to do that, when you come in and say, well, I want all of these new things, you both aren't going to have a good time.
Right.
Because no one likes to change. And when you change things, it takes a lot of work,
Just the phone calls that are involved.
Right.
if I was building, back when I was building spec houses, it was easy. So one of the subs say, hey, I can't do this, or the tub wasn't available at the wholesaler. Can we use this one? Absolutely, go get it.
Right.
In the real world, if there's a customer involved, there's a phone call. They have to talk to their spouse.
Right.
We'll get back to you. That answer isn't coming back that day. It may not come back that week.
And they never pick the one that's in stock.
Nope.
On the other side. It's the special order that comes in and it's cracked, it's broken, and it's another 3 weeks to get it. So,
yeah. Hey, Torrington Supply has 5 of these.
Right.
Get it.
Exactly. And by the way, it's a nice fixture, but it's also a good bang for your buck.
Right.
So it keeps the cost down. So step one, you find the realtor, you're going like yourself, and then you want to find the piece of property.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it can kind of fit what type of house you want. And then the next steps is you're going to go and find a builder that, if you're not really picky, I think there's a lot of people out there that are like, I need a building.
Right.
So you're going to have a better time if you say, hey, builder, what do you typically build? Right. And what are the plans? And what kind of finishes that you typically have? That's the other thing, right?
Right.
Would be what level of finishes? Because everybody, like you're saying, all these guys like yourself had all these your subs lined up.
Mm-hmm.
If they're used to doing what we would say, builder grade finishes, and
right.
then you're trying to have them do custom cabinets with a 5-part crown, nobody might not be having a good day.
Right.
So I think it's a really sit down, an adult conversation with the builder.
Yeah.
And of course we don't want to say no to stuff, but it's, in some ways you're like, listen, I don't know if I can get that out of my guys.
I told a builder friend of mine years ago that when he was talking to some people and he said, I'm not sure if they're going to be good or bad. And I said, go out to lunch with them.
Mm-hmm.
I said, sit down at the table and see how long it takes them to order their meal.
Right.
If they can look at that menu and figure out what they're going to have in 30 seconds, you can build for them. If the waiter comes back twice and they haven't figured it out yet, don't even touch it.
I love that. Or they're sitting there and they're, I want this with this, but take the cheese off
right.
of this and put it over there. And
because everyone says they know what they want.
Right.
But what the reality is they know what they want when they see it.
Right.
And then they know they don't want it.
Right.
So.
And so I think, that's key for the builder too. But also, the customer looking at it, I think some of this is understand all of the logistics of this. This isn't an Amazon order.
No.
There has to be some concessions with the builder.
Right.
Like, you're not going to find the perfect builder that's going to build exactly what you want, but meet in the middle so that you can get to that end goal. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's having a good time.
Right. And that comes down to the rapport with the builder too.
Right.
You have to have rapport with the builder.
Right.
Otherwise you're going to be butting heads the whole time. You've got to have some trust in them. We do this as a living.
Mm-hmm.
So we make pretty good decisions.
Right.
And there are reasons a kitchen's laid out the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe in your last house the dishwasher was on this side. Well, it's over here because of what's going on the floor below, and it's easier to get the plumbing across or the electrical or whatever the issue may be. And there's a reason we put the fridge where it is, or we have reasons, because every time you do a house, you learn the mistake of the last, and you fix it.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. There's the mechanic side of things, the structure side of things, why you're building a certain way, so that the structure lines up, and then your mechanicals can kind of tie together in certain areas.
Yeah.
And then there's also, you've been in so many houses and buildings, you also know the feeling of things, putting
Right.
things in certain areas, in certain size rooms. So yeah, the trusting your builder
Mm-hmm.
for their expertise
Yep.
and finding the right one that's going to match your expectations. Because again, I think, if they're not doing fully custom and they don't have maybe a design team that's going to sit down with you and really go through all the details, you're going to, a lot of builders just want to build and get it done with.
Yeah, I never had this stuff
Right.
in my office.
Right. So, and I don't, yeah, I mean, half this stuff is like the vendors come in and they're like, can we put stuff up? I'm like, sure, it will make it look nice. We're not using them. But yeah, so, but it's key. Like when people really want to be picky, like unless that company, that builder's set up to deal with you as a picky client, it's just going to be, you're going to be butting heads. And the other key thing is understand the cost. A full custom builder is going to cost way more. So don't go to the builder grade builder. There's no difference between these guys. They're both fulfilling a different section of the market.
Right.
Don't try to get a full custom home out of a, production builder.
Right.
It's not going to happen. You can't get that. That price is going to end up at $800 and $1,000 a square.
Mm-hmm.
But you trying to get it for $500, no one's having a good time.
Right.
So I it's so funny because I don't know how many people will contact us and be like, give us a price. And I'm like, what?
$500 a foot.
Yeah, like if you just want a price, you need to interview us. And I say, if you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, do you not want to come to our office and see who we are?
Right.
Do you not want to understand our process and
come to a job site?
Come to a job site, talk to, or you just want a number? You're going to make the decision off of a number. So it's exactly the same thing with the house. Don't call up a builder and say, well, what's your price per square foot?
Yeah.
And, hey, can I come in and can I talk to you? I want to know about what you like doing, what you typically do.
Right.
And what types of houses and, your timelines and vice versa. I want you to, so I'm talking the client side. I want the builder to want to work with me because I'm cool and chill and we're meshing. This is a relationship because you're like, what did you say? 2 years?
Right.
2 years you're going to have, that's a long relationship. That could be a marriage for some people, know?
But and back to the trust thing, you've got to understand that there are reasons we make decisions that we do.
Mm-hmm.
I one person, they wanted to add a door to the garage so that they could, walk out without lifting the overhead door. I said, great. It's going to be $350.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, why is that so much? The door's $100 at Home Depot. I said, the door is $100 at Home Depot, but it's $160 at my lumber yard.
Right.
And there's a header and there's installation and all of that.
Right.
And he goes, well, I'll just go pick it up and you can put it in. And I said, it's still not going to be $100.
Right.
Because, you're going to bring it and it's going to have a dent or there's something else. And ultimately, I have to warranty it.
Right.
So there's reasons we do things. The lumberyard brings it out. They put it right where you want it. If there's a problem with it, they return it. They get you another one. There's a lot of reasons we do the things we do.
Right.
And even the subs we choose, we don't. I mean, I'm sure you're the same. You get guys who you like and you know their work and you keep them.
Yeah.
They're like family and you don't bid them.
And guys that are good are putting that extra screw, that extra bit of, glue, cutting things a little bit better, and the stuff lasts longer. There's no
They're
issues.
efficient, they're clean,
Yeah.
they're fast.
Yeah.
They're not wasting your time.
Right.
They're not getting callbacks.
Right.
And, houses like airplanes should not be built on a low bid contract.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
And don't listen, unless you're Toll Brothers or your carrier. I mean, and even those guys take a bath sometimes too. builders aren't making tons of money. They have
No.
a ton of risk. They are producing a production of a house.
Yeah.
They should make us some money. Don't beat up a service person about money, because then all of a sudden the service gets disrupted. I think, people are Amazon has kind of they're searching for how quickly can I get it, and what's the cheapest thing, and that's a completely different. Housing is not as much of a product when you're in the custom build side of things. It's if you're sitting down, it's a relationship and it's a service. I like this analogy. You're really going to try to beat up your surgeon or your healthcare provider for cost. Like, you want to give them as much money as you can so that they'll put your heart back together.
Yeah.
No
one complains when their BMW mechanic makes $150 an hour, bills $150 an hour.
Right.
I mean, what do you bill a carpenter at? 75?
Right.
They complain about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it should be the opposite. Like, when you're going to go get, I like the medical side of things, is like when you're going to go get a specialty surgery or something, you're going to find the surgeon that's driving the Porsche, because that dude's been successful and he hasn't been killing people.
Right.
And that's why he's so, he's making so much money. That's what the result is. So, and obviously, there is guys out there that could be taking advantage, but I think most of the builders are not. I think everybody's trying to, make a living.
They're all base hits.
Yeah.
No one's killing it on houses right now.
Exactly. I mean, and then, there's a lot of risk too, because when people went through COVID and, and pricing went through the roof, like, what does builders do? I know some of the bigger guys had to shut down some developments because they were just like, I can't, it's 40, 50 grand more just in lumber costs, just to finish the house. And how do you pass that on to a client that already has a mortgage on it? It's we're financing for that amount. But
yeah.
So we're at the stage of you're interviewing the builder, and this needs to not be on price, and this needs to be a relationship. And it needs to be done probably, do 3 or 4, at least a minimum of 3, right? Because you're going to have 3 different personalities, and then you might realize, okay, not those out of those 3, I kind of know more that I want, but one guy maybe is, 2 years out or something, or 3 years out.
And what you should do is don't ask them to meet on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yeah, let them have some family time.
Take an afternoon, take a day.
Yeah.
And go out and meet them at their job site. See how they're working. See who's there. See what the place looks like. You'll get a lot of...
Is there a dumpster? Or are they just throwing everything on the ground?
Right. Is it clean?
Yeah. Walking into the house, if it's being framed right now, is it just, all the cutoffs just all over the, yeah. Porta potty. Is there a porta potty on the site? Yeah, you say
or are they
this,
going in the woods?
Yeah, but you say that, you
right.
You have to, because those are the little details that the builder doesn't care about his guys.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
or maybe he got chewed down too low. He can't afford the $150 a month for the portalet.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are all, and just the feeling of it, is the workers whistling and having a good time, or are they hiding in the back smoking and joking?
Right.
There's a
and
feeling.
Look at the subs he's got. Is someone asking how to do something?
Right.
My framers, they worked for me for 20 years. And there was always conversation on the job, but nobody knew what they had to do. Nobody was asking, because one guy always cut the headers. One guy was always doing the layout. One guy was always moving the materials and loading the walls before they framed them. So, everyone knew what they were doing. Right. And that speaks volumes. When you see that on a job, you've got a good crew.
And that also goes with keeping the builder building the stuff that he does. Because if you come up with some crazy hip roofs of, with all different angles, and they're sitting there scratching their head. How am I going to match all this up? Nobody's having a good time.
No.
So the interview, communication obviously is key in that whole process. But at the same time, realize that the builder is not an office and in a corporate job.
Right.
This guy is building stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to respond on his time.
Yeah, respect boundaries.
Yeah.
Everyone does the same thing. They go to work, they think about work.
Right.
They're on the way home, they start thinking about their outside stuff and the house.
Right.
That's when they make their calls. Well, it's 6 o'clock.
Right.
I'm having dinner.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to you.
Right.
In fact, I don't want to talk to you tonight.
Right.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that because...
And people have to respect boundaries. Right. Do it during the day. Take your lunch.
Yep. Do
it then.
Take a day off. You're about to spend $1 million with somebody. Yeah. You're not going to take a day off and make the rounds. We had a client more recently, and it was a referral, and the guy was like, I can only meet on Saturdays. And I'm like, I can only meet during the week. So I don't know how this is going to work.
Right. I got office hours too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So boundaries, understand that, it's a relationship. And honestly, if you find somebody, it's these guys are overwhelmed and overtaxed.
Right.
So don't,
It's a mindset too. You don't own them.
Right. Exactly.
You're hiring them, and they're doing a service. They're delivering a service, but you don't own them.
Right. Yeah. That's some people think that. And you have to have a hard conversation.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we've interviewed, and you found a builder. You've made some concessions. You've listened to the builder. You've said, what do you recommend? I love when a client says, what do you recommend?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many clients coming in, well, this is what I want. And I'm like, don't, my team collectively has like 150 years experience. Don't ask us. We don't know what we're doing. It's like, we're going to do it your way. You found on the internet. So listen to your builder.
Yep.
And then you try to pick something that the builder's built.
Right. And if you have ideas, that's fine too. We're not excluding any of that.
Right.
And my best advice was, if you see something in a magazine or you see something online, do a screenshot or tear a page out. Mm-hmm. Keep a folder of it. Keep a folder of pictures. Save images. Mm-hmm. And if this is a kitchen you like, send that to me.
Yeah. And ask.
And we can accommodate things.
Right. And ask, what do you think?
Right.
Do you see any issues here, or new products?
Right.
Like, everybody's hot for new products, but I mean, this. There's products that every decade products have come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been some bad ones out there, like where, that things literally fell apart.
Yeah.
10 years. I mean, no one realizes, like, composite decking was garbage in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like it fell apart, it blew up, like
or the oriented strand board siding.
Right.
And,
right.
Back
at
class action lawsuit there.
Yeah, I mean, even Anderson Windows had, all their finger jointed stuff fell apart in like 8 years and rotted. Like,
I was talking to an insulation guy this morning, and the latest craze is sawdust.
Right.
And
which
they've got it in bats, and they've got it blow in, and that's the latest green insulation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were laughing about it. It's another wave. It's going to come and go, and do not be the first guy that does it.
Yeah, exactly. So key thing, when you're bringing products, don't say, hey, I want this. Ask, what do you guys think about this? What have you seen? Because there's a lot of stuff that even more recent. I think we talked about these apron sinks. I just saw the apron sinks are hot right now, but what happens is the water comes up over the edge, comes down, and it basically, it's almost like a drip edge where it pulls the water down.
Capillary action.
Yeah, and then it rots out the top of the cabinet doors. So now builders are like, they're literally putting a drip edge underneath to get the water off of the door so it goes on the least on the floor so that the client can see, hey, there's water on the floor. Let me mop that up instead of it going behind the door or on top of it. So it's little stuff like that. Nobody's realizing.
Yeah.
So we picked the house. We've helped the client. We've kind of gotten plans. We've adjusted our details with the help of the builder, saying, hey, let's keep the layout of the bathroom here because my stack is coming down. I'm grabbing that the first floor and the second floor together. It's going to save plumbing.
Right.
Now what's the next step?
I guess budget, negotiations, price.
Yeah.
Don't max it out.
Right. Yeah.
Try and stay between 80 and 90%. Know your numbers. Right. Try and stay between 80 and 90%.
Yeah.
That way, when you turn the key in the door, you still got money. You can furnish it.
Mm-hmm.
Through the process, you can make changes. If there's that new oven comes out that you have to have, that French door oven, you can get it. You don't want regrets when you're closing on the house. You don't want to have to settle.
Yep. So
don't bite off more than you can choose.
I love that. I think that's a huge tip right there because there's always, as you go along, there could be upgrades, but then the furnishing, I don't think people realize if you're coming from 1,000 square feet and you just, maybe it's an apartment and you just did 3,000, like you've got lots of things to buy.
Yep.
And then what about landscaping? Because I feel like people miss that because a lot of builders don't do that.
A lot of builders will do a walk and then maybe some foundation plantings or something, but really that's going to be left up to, unless you have a package in there, that's going to be left up to you. And hire a landscaper, do it when you can. If you can't afford it right off, then don't do it. Right.
But you should,
or go and do it yourself.
Yeah.
Get the shovel.
But realize, because you do see some of these smaller one-off houses around that you're just like, the homeowner did not realize that they needed to do something.
Right.
Because, there is a walkway, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And the grass really didn't, the grass was planted at the wrong time. And,
it looks funny.
Yeah.
It's like the kitchen without any knickknacks.
Yeah.
Or, little things, accessories around on the countertops. It looks funny.
Yeah. And realize like that's tens of thousands of dollars to do a nice landscape. Like the houses that have it really done well can be $100,000 plus to get to get that designed and put in. And so I love that 80% rule.
Yeah.
So you got the plans. You hope, or you're gonna have to start with a A2 survey, right? Is that that would be the next step?
That's the builder's stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna go out. You're gonna walk the lot with the builder. Once you've selected the builder, once you've selected the property, you walk the lot. You work together on how it's going to be sited, where the driveway is going to come in. There are a lot of issues that he's going to consider that you won't.
Right.
You have to have line of sight when you come out, where the utilities are coming in. Are they going to be overhead or underground?
Yep.
All of those things. But, figure out how it's going to sit and
that's going to be also if it's a smaller lot. I know you're used to kind of building in the, in areas where you usually have some land. So you can kind of do stuff.
Oh, but I built in properties where we had the surveyor come out and pin the footings so that
because you were that close.
We were
to the
inches
lines.
to the setback.
Right.
So
that's going to maybe your house can only be kind of with that style that you've picked, the floor plan that you've picked. It maybe can only be a certain way on the lot because of the length. Your setbacks is constricting. How you turn it. But if you're open. You're wide open. You want to think about, the sun, what's going to be your south facing, part of the home. If you can, think about it in that way where your windows are all going to be, if you can adjust that and have, you like plants, house plants and stuff, you can adjust where that is.
Well, and think about how the house is laid out. And
Right.
if you're watching football on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of winter, you don't want the sun coming in from the
Right.
side and going
Right.
straight across the TV. You won't
Right.
see a single play.
Right.
But if you can think that far in advance,
Yeah.
then you can avoid that.
Right. And then of course it's the topography of the land too, like because you're if you don't have city utilities, you have to think about where am I going to be able to fit my septic.
Mm-hmm.
The well usually really doesn't have that much. There are certain setbacks for the well, but it can that can go pretty much anywhere.
Punch a hole in the
Yeah.
ground in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Pretty much anywhere you're going to hit
Yeah.
water.
And so that's a good point. When do you recommend the well?
I used to try and get all that rough site work, the septic, the well,
Mm-hmm.
done early.
Yeah.
So the yard is chewed up once,
Right.
and you can put it back to a reasonable grade, and then just leave spreading the topsoil to the end.
Yeah, and also there's an additional cost there too. I mean, obviously, right? Like you can, they pound the well down 100 feet, and then it needs to go 200, 300, 400, and it's
There's state regulations on
Yeah.
flow and depth and
right.
and
So it could,
static water level. There's
yeah,
a column of water sitting in your well in the ground, and
Mhm.
in a 6-inch hole, it's going to be 1.5 gallons a foot. So
And if you don't get those, like you got to keep going.
right.
And then the well guy comes back and it's like it's X amount of dollars a foot.
Yep.
So open the checkbook, because if you don't have water, you don't have a CO.
And that's an unknown.
Right.
So, I had a well years ago. I think it was 2007. We were 1,000 feet,
Wow.
and we barely hit
Right.
state minimum,
Right.
and that was after fracking it and everything else. It was a $30,000 well on a $400,000 house.
Right. That's a big deal. There goes your 20%.
It should have been 5.
Right. Yeah.
So, and a good builder, just expect it. A good builder is going to say, okay, there's an allowance on that.
Right.
If you're picking the lot, there's an allowance on that. There's an allowance on site work.
Yep.
If we hit ledge, that's extra. If we hit a lot of excessive water, groundwater,
Yep.
that's extra.
So getting all that stuff done, getting the well in, a good builder's going to get all that stuff in the beginning. So then you can say, hey, I'm not going to finish the room over the garage. I'm going to have to do, not finish the basement.
Sure.
So I can, if you're on a tight budget. So septic well, then what's, you got you start with the foundation. Where does it go
Foundation
from there?
in, get the drainage in,
Yep.
get the slab poured, rough in the driveway so it's usable.
Yep.
You don't want guys coming in and dealing with mud every day. Doesn't matter what time of year you build, there's going to be mud.
Mhm.
And
don't you have to on construction sites now? What do they do at the very beginning of the road? You have to get
anti-tracking pad.
Yeah.
You have to. It's a truckload of rough stone.
Mm-hmm.
People with nice cars don't like driving over it, but
Right.
when you're driving out with a truck, the idea is that the mud, that rough rock, will knock the mud off your tires, so you're not pulling that out into the street, and it's not washing into water courses and silting things up.
That's another good point with the silt control, especially if you're up against wetlands and stuff. What does that entail, and what that's additional cost too, right? Or it can
It's
be.
not additional to the buyer, but it's a cost. Definitely, it's a cost that should be assumed by the builder. You've got to have silt fence. You've got to make sure that the grading is done properly, so you're not running dirt or loose material into wetlands or conservation areas or brooks or streams.
Right.
It's just not good business. It's not good for the environment.
And I don't think people realize when you have an open site that's been excavated and you have a couple good rains like we get, a lot of dirt moves.
A lot of
stuff.
water moves.
Yeah.
It just there's a lot of, you figure an area, and if you are channeling it to a small area, then you're getting a lot of, you figure a half inch or an inch of water over an acre, Okay, it's not a big deal. You channel that into something that's 3 feet wide,
Right.
it's going to be a lot of water.
Yeah. And those are the little details. And I know, a good excavator is gonna really, he's gonna shape it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And oh well, this guy was cheaper. Well, he just created a flood zone
Yeah.
in your backyard because he didn't really think it out, or didn't have the time.
Yeah.
He didn't have enough allotted hours because he was cheaper, and he was on to the next one because he needed to pay his mortgage.
And that's the thing too. If you've got an excavator who's so busy that he does the backfill and then he pulls the machine right out that afternoon.
Right.
Well, you want to make sure that you've had a rain or two, just to make sure that everything isn't pooling or going against the foundation, that it hasn't settled against the foundation. You've got low spots close to the house. Yeah. You don't want it running off and crossing the driveway. You want to make sure. And if he's got to pull that machine, if he's to that point where he's got to pull that machine immediately, everyone has to make enough that they don't have to be running 24/7.
Yeah. I think that's a whole other thing too. Like, and you get an excavator in there that doesn't know what they're doing, and they make the hole twice too big. Like all that stuff. What people don't realize is like you have to dig down and be careful when you get close to your elevations, because you don't want to disrupt. You're trying to build and set your footings on virgin soil that's never been touched, because or you have to compact it and all of that stuff. So you get
you can't over dig it and backfill it,
right? Because
you're
then
going to end up with cracks.
Yeah,
and you can't have the opening too big either,
right?
Because they have to be able to get to the forms, the concrete trucks. Unless you want to pay for a pump truck, your concrete truck needs to drive up to the edge of the foundation.
All these little nuances, I don't think anybody even has a clue. No idea. So then we've got the foundation in. You've got a good excavator, so now you're not going to have a lot of stuff settling. And he keeps his machine on there, so where the spots where it settles, he can regrade it, and get it decent. What's the next step then?
Get the foundation in, get it backfilled, put your silt and erosion controls in place, whether it's hay bales or silt fence or whatever, and get ready for the framer. Have an area where you can drop the materials. A lot of the trucks have moffets now, the forklift that hangs off the back, but we used to get our lumber loads where they would it was like a dump truck, but it was a flatbed, and they would just dump the load. And you have to have an area that you can set that. A lot of the framers now have, equipment, big forklifts, lulls, or another machine, and they need to be able to move around the house with the materials and have it so that it's efficient for them. So that goes all back to the excavator. He needs to facilitate that for them. But framers come in, they build the house. It's the biggest change, the quickest
it's the
change
funnest.
there is.
It's definitely the one of the funner trades coming in. But going back to going with your lumber yard and that relationship where like you don't put it's stacking your lumber, so when it comes off the truck, it's what you need is on the top,
right,
and not on the bottom. Like all your sill plates are, on the bottom of all your roof rafters.
We all write the list the same way.
Right.
Sill plates, first item.
Yeah.
Then your box and your floor system. We all do the takeoff the same way.
Right.
And that's how we send it to them.
Yeah.
They have to have the basic common sense.
Yeah. Flip that around
to know that the 2x4s don't go on the top.
Yeah.
They go on the bottom.
Yeah. And that's probably why a lot of the builders just got so fed up with it. They're like, we're buying a lull. Yeah. I gotta readjust all of this. But again, it's all of those. It's the relationships. It's the builder that is doing the volume or has the relationship with all the suppliers that that saves them time, and it's more efficient. So framing's pretty quick, but now you're in a. This is where it's key that the builders very organized, is because now you've got all this lumber up, and now it's talk to me about what getting it weather tight.
Well, that's the thing, and there are going to be deadlines in the relationship that you've got to meet, and if you're picking out windows, if you're not making it a fully stock house, you're customizing some things. You've got to have that window order done before they stick the shovel in the ground, really, because lead times on, depending on the manufacturer, Anderson, Pella, some of the better brands, if you're going with a good quality window, you could be looking at 6-month lead times on some of the different series if it's not their stock unit.
Right.
So that has to be ordered well in advance, and there cannot be any deviation. You can't have a house sitting with a hole in it for 6 months because it stops everything.
Yeah.
So hopefully that order has gone as it should, and your lumberyard has checked it, because those windows are probably coming in while your lumber is being delivered.
Right.
So if there's a mistake in there, or if there's a broken unit, they have to get on that. But getting the house weather tight, having the roofing selected, having it there first, having a siding decision made, getting all of that enclosed, because it's going to look like the house sits for a while,
Right.
because the status of it may not change very quickly at that point. It's up, maybe your windows are in, the roof is on, but maybe the siding isn't on, and guys are working inside. There are a lot of things that can happen at the same time at that point.
Right.
And your electrician is in there. I used to like to bring the plumber in first, because his pipes are hardest to move around. Electrician comes in last. HVAC is in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
Ductwork can, avoid a lot of things.
Right.
But
yeah, the main, your drains are really your bathroom drain waste pipes really dictate where they want to go. They run the show.
That's that communication between the subs too. That your framer is intelligent enough, when he's looking at the print, he can see where the toilet is.
Right.
Don't have a floor joist under that.
Yeah. Right.
Have it in the bay that's between joists. Same thing with the tub, where the control goes. You've got a 3-foot wall.
Yeah.
At the end of the tub. Don't put a stud in the center, because that's where the control's got to go.
Right.
You're going to put an extra stud in there. It's going to be space them 14 apart.
Yeah.
And
don't run the mindless 16 on center. Think about what wall you're building.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, that's a team where, when the framer knows the plumber, then they're like, hey, let me, I want to help.
Or is just that better level of a contractor.
Exactly.
That they've done it before. They're not fresh in the business. They know what they're looking at. They know how to get it done.
The framers putting that extra blocking in for cabinets and stuff like that. Those are the little details.
And knowing the code issues that may not be spelled out on a set of prints.
Right.
How the sheathing needs to be laid out, the shear walls.
Right.
Everything is complex now with foundation anchors and tying everything back down to the foundation. So
which is when we look and you see these these storms, these hurricanes, and then it's like a newer house that's been built like fully intact, and you're like, all this strapping.
What was that down at what was the island down in Florida? There was one house standing.
And it was newer, and it was just
I don't want to know who built those houses. I want to know who built that house.
Yeah. A lot of the codes. I mean, obviously there's Simpsonite and all those guys are lobbying to get more brackets installed, but I think there's some data behind that works. So we're at weather. You want to get that home weather tight. You want to make sure that the windows have been ordered in time, because the last thing, and the technology has come a long way with the Vanatech plywood and zip wall and all of that stuff. So the framer, even if they don't, it withstands a certain amount of weather.
Right.
But when you're down and here's a telltale sign. When you go to a new construction site and you're starting to see all the nailing bleeding, and it's all the, it's going to see black staining around all where the nails are. That thing's been out in the weather too long.
Yep.
And now, especially if you're not using those the heavier, the more expensive subfloors like a Vanatech that has that rating to be wet for a certain amount of time. This stuff's starting to break down.
Degrading.
Structure.
Yeah.
Degrading.
Any of the engineered materials,
right?
They have a certain time they can be exposed, but
Right.
at some point they need to be enclosed. And
Yeah. So getting that roof on, yeah. I mean, everything. A lot of things are glued together now,
Right.
so it only lasts for so long with underwater.
Yep.
A good builder is not going to allow that.
No.
And then think about time of year too. And the builder has to charge more if he's knowing he's going to go through a winter, and he has to get his guys out there. Even the framers, I mean, they've got to get some heat somewhere.
Days are shorter.
They're shoveling.
Yep.
Especially they got that first floor down, the deck down, and now you got 12 inches of snow.
Yeah.
Who's clearing that, the 2,000 or 1,000 square feet of you can't get a plow truck on there.
No, I've shoveled out foundations.
Right.
I've poured foundations in every month of the year.
Right.
You can do it. It's a little more work, but if you're doing a foundation, you get the excavator there at 6 a.m. and he digs out that last foot or 6 inches of material to get to the final grade. The guys there, we used to set up, get inspected, and pour footings in the same day.
Wow. Yeah.
And while they're pouring the concrete, I'm running out to get hay or thermal blankets to put on everything when we're done, because you can't let it freeze.
Right.
And concrete only cures at a certain temperature.
Right.
Below that, it stops.
Yeah.
So
all of those little things, we have to deal with in New England.
Yeah.
And then even, a lot of the new systems now, have these. I think Zipwall has gotten their tape has gotten, they're always constantly having it being able to cure at lower temperatures. But a lot of the stuff out there, there's a certain cure temperature that has to for the that you have to,
right.
or the builder might not use the runs that are rated for. So that's the other thing. That goes back to a good builder. I mean,
right.
I've got to glue my subfloor down, so let me just use this, the PL from Home Depot instead of using the foam stuff that's good for all temperatures.
Right.
All of those little nuances affect, the
final product. Yeah.
final product. My floors squeak or they don't squeak.
Yep.
So framing, hopefully you've gotten the windows in. Hopefully your the supplier has double checked and not 6 of the windows are wrong.
Right. But you get weather tight. You get, now it's time for the plumber.
Yeah.
You've decided ahead of time how things are going to be laid out, so he can pretty much take that print and go through it. Hopefully you've selected if there's any special fixtures you need, or if a Moen or a Kohler shower valve is acceptable, then that goes in.
Yep.
That can go pretty smoothly. The real handshake needs to take place with electrical, because those are the things you're going to be touching a lot.
Yeah.
Where lighting is. If you want under cabinet, it's best. There are lights that are motion and rechargeable and all of that. You can put those in, but really the best lights are pre-wired and go to a switch and where recess lights are going to go, where they're appropriate, where they're not, where you need a fixture.
Yeah.
So that's where you're going to do a walkthrough.
Right.
Hopefully the builder and the electrician have done the walkthrough first. You show up at the end and just say, okay.
Right.
When you open a door, you're going to want the switch right there. Right. Everyone knows that. Yeah. Don't be deciding how close to the door it needs to be.
Right.
they're going to get it close.
Right. Yeah, there's certain codes. I mean, there's and yeah, you're right. The electrician, the builder, I feel like that stage, a good builder starts really marking up the framing.
Yep.
Right. And what does that mean? What is that like? What does that look like?
They'll go around. There will be outlets marked.
Mm-hmm.
How many there's code requires, but if you want lights in the windows at Christmas time,
Yep.
you're going to want an outlet underneath it.
Yep.
So,
marking the door swings.
Yep.
So that the electrician's doesn't put it on the wrong side.
Wrong side of the door.
And then you open the door, and then you can't get to the light switch because it's behind the door.
It's outside the bedroom.
Yeah.
No, they. Again, and that's the relationship between the builder and the electrician. One will error check the other.
Yeah.
So that
I saw some cool. They've got these printers now that are that you can literally go and print out. Because a lot of guys will go out, use the spray paint, mark, where your recessed lights are going to be on the floor, mark where your outlets are, because the next step is once we get that, we do drywall, and a lot of stuff can get covered.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw some, they had like these printers where they would go down and it would, I don't know how you could print stuff on the floor so that it was, tell you what was here, what was there. So the technology is coming a lot, because listen, the guys out in the field, if they're looking at the prints, they miss something. It's much better if it's kind of laid out.
Sure.
This is where the tub's going to be, all that stuff. So, and then hopefully the good electrician comes through, and then your lead electrician and your lead plumber come through, and they'll mark out all of their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, hey, okay, that all looks good, knowing what they're marking out.
Right.
Because, the guy that's pulling the wire might not be he's just pulling the wire.
Right.
And the guys running the pipes they're just running the pipes.
Yeah.
So usually it's your the manager or the owner of the company is usually doing the layouts.
Right. But if you've got things that are particular to you, if you have a certain trim that's going in the dining room or something, and you don't want to be looking at the outlets in the middle of the wall, you want them in the baseboard, then say it and realize there's going to be an extra cost with that, because it takes more time and effort for the trimmer to work around that. But or if you want an outlet in the pantry closet so that you can put a rechargeable vacuum or something else in there.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a station that you want for cell phone charging or things of that nature, just, realize that some things may cost a little more, and that's again why you don't want to be maxing out your budget. Right. So if you've got $1,000 or $5,000 in extra electrical, it's worth it, because without it, you can't. That's one of those things you really can't go back and do it after. No. Some of them you might be able to, but
well, especially now, and this is the next step. We've got the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC in, is insulation. Now, it starts to become hard to remodel if you spray foam.
Right.
Like it's not, the electrician's not snaking a wire anymore.
Right.
So spray foam, but now when we get to insulation, you have to. Do you recommend? Does it have to be sided, or at least the windows?
I think most of the building departments want you to be sided at that point, at that stage. Used to be you had to be sided before the electrical went in, and I had one building official make me pull all the wires out of the outside of the house.
Yeah.
Because we weren't sided yet. And his contention was that someone could take a longer nail and put it through from the outside, and then what do you do? So, but they like it before you go to insulation.
Yeah.
They want it finished materials on the outside of the house.
Right. Which makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And that leads to the point where, a big thing that the building officials are looking for when the electrical and the plumbing have been finished is nail plates.
Yeah.
and that's to protect, for people to understand what that is a metal plate over where that wire is and where the plumbing is. And yeah, that helps with the drywall guy, so he doesn't put a screw in that or a long screw, because
or the homeowner,
right? And that's what was my next point. It's the homeowner. You're about to put a picture in,
right?
And you're burning your house down because you hit electrical line.
Good thing is though that with the advent of good quality cell phone cameras,
right?
Do a walk around on the house, especially if it's yours. But a good builder will do it too. But do it for yourself and take a picture of every single wall before the insulation goes in. That way you know where the pipes are. You know where the wires are. It saved me countless hours over the years knowing that, okay, that wire doesn't go down into the basement immediately. It goes around the wall. And why when I open the fridge does the microwave go off and trip a breaker on me? Well, they're on the same circuit. Why is that? Well, that's how they got wired.
That's a really, really good point. It documented, because I mean, listen. The marketplace will make you remodel at least a minimum every 20 years. 15 years if you want to stay trendy.
Yep.
You're renovating, so if it saves a ton of costs on the remodel side if we know what's in the wall.
Right.
For everything. Or if you're just adding something, hey, well, I've got, I can grab this, grab this power because this is what's on it,
Or down the road, if there's a leak.
Right.
Why is there a leak?
Right. Well, we know the water's going up this way.
Right.
Because leaks can really be challenging, because water will like run down different stuff and then pop out a light. Everyone's like, oh, it's coming out the light fixture. It must be leaking. No, that's the only hole. It's like the leak could be 20 feet away from there. It's just, that's the only opening. Okay, so we've got the rough inspection. We've got what is your thought on bat versus spray foam insulation?
We're kind of at an interesting point. The energy codes are forcing a lot of spray foam.
Yeah.
But spray foam creates some issues. Parts of the house become very tight.
Yep.
Parts aren't.
Yep.
And the parts that aren't will breathe, and water vapor, and especially, this time of year, you got a warm day, you got a cold night.
Yep.
Well, you're going to have higher humidity in the house, and during the night, it wants to go to the cold side, and it will find it. Yeah. So I think 10 years from now, we're going to see a lot of rot on houses that people thought they had gone the extra mile because they didn't do air sealing.
Right.
But I still think a good bat insulation, if you have thick enough walls, or if your res check allows it, have a good quality window so you can, a very efficient window,
right,
in, like a 2 or a 2.5 rating, then you can have an R21 in the outside wall and a 2x6 wall and get by.
Yeah.
And, the standard systems of wall construction can still exist and meet the current energy model.
Yeah. I think some of the challenges in the attic, I think it's an R60 now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like,
it changes the way you frame the house, too. We used to have the rafters sitting on the top plate.
Right.
You can't do that anymore.
Yeah, because you need 6 feet of insulation.
Right.
It's crazy. And that's where what we see. I mean, we see in the remodeling side of things is like if we've gutted an old house and it's, the old.
I saw the one you did in Woodbury.
Yeah, right. There's no way we pass res check on any of that or a blower door test.
You just got, because and that in that case, you do the best you can.
Right.
You get as close as you can, and you leave it at that. But
But I agree. I think what people don't realize is like these old homes, the lumber was different too. It was the old fir had a nice tight grain. It had, You know, it's not like these tree farm lumber that we get now. But it was
2x4 with 6 rings in it.
right, exactly. It's and that's why we have to have all these everything, you know, all of our span maps are so much smaller than they used to be able to do, because you got to have, like, you know, a 2x10 that is about the same strength as a 2x4 used to be.
Yeah.
But the yeah, where was I going there? Yeah. So right. For the spray foam, I think what we're missing is that we need to do air exchange.
Yes.
And these old homes used to be so airy, like, and because energy cost was so low,
Right.
that they constantly dried out. They never had a chance to rot.
Right.
But now I think with the spray foam, the spray foam, the air exchange it helps the indoor air quality.
Right.
But it's still, what you're saying is like it's going to be...
the indoor air quality can get bad pretty quick.
Right.
I mean, if you're building humidity in a house, you can have mold in the bathrooms. You can, you know, if you can have a vent hood over a stove, but the cooking smells aren't going to leave that house if air isn't getting in.
Right.
So you have to have makeup air somewhere.
Yeah. And I think building inspectors have turned onto that, because some people want this gourmet, you know, that's pulling out so many CFMs, you know, and it's like making the door, you know, the windows rattle, because there's no way to get that makeup air. So we've been asked for how are you gonna make that air up.
I had an issue in my own house. My own house is completely spray foam,
right,
and air sealed, and I've got makeup air. But if the dryer was running,
right,
and the vent in the kitchen was running, and the dishwasher was running, it would suck the water right out of that trap for the dishwasher. So all of a sudden I can smell the sewer.
Wow. Yeah, that's really tight then. Yeah.
And you've got to be able to make that up somehow.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've got the air exchange unit in my house is 2 8-inch ducts that go to the outside. And,
nice.
you know, one pulls in, one goes out.
Right.
And every time the furnace turns on, that turns on.
Right. And that's what is an air exchanger for?
What does it cost?
Yeah, no, but what basically does it do?
It brings in outside air and it exhausts inside air. And what they do is there's a way that those air streams can cross inside the unit, so that the incoming air, if outside it's 10 degrees, is picking up the warmth of the exhausted air before it is introduced into your return system.
Yeah, because it would defeat the purpose if you're just pulling cold air in.
Right.
Because then it's just basically like having a window open.
Yeah, you're pumping 70-degree air outside and bringing in 10.
So all of these things have brought, you know, the tighter houses, like, but now you have to put a whole new appliance now that costs, you know. So it's funny how we try to save energy, but now we have a whole new thing that we need to install. But I will say, you note, especially, like, it feels quiet and it feels very, like, comfortable in a house that's tight.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, like,
it's
still.
like a good quality car. You close the door on a
Yeah.
cheap car, you hear it. You close it, it's got a different sound to it.
Right.
Although the funny thing about spray foam is it transmits sound.
Okay.
It's solid. I hear the rain on the roof.
Right.
I like that sound.
Right.
But I hear the rain on the roof.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah. It kind of makes sense, though.
Yeah.
So now comes the drywall stage, and I think, you know, that's probably the next fun spot.
Right.
Because framing was fun.
All of a sudden you have rooms.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's quick, it's fast.
Right.
It goes up in a couple days, and then they start taping it, and where you had a hard sense of scale before, now you've got rooms.
Yeah.
Now you can really feel a room.
Does it feel bigger or smaller when you usually drywall?
I think it feels big when the sheetrock goes up.
Yep.
And then when they tape it and they put the lines on it where the screws are, it makes it smaller again, it seems.
That's interesting, because I agree when you have, well, going back, when you put the foundation in, you're like, oh geez, that's a small house.
Right.
Then when you frame, you're like, that's a big house.
Yep.
And then when it's framed in and it's sheathed and everything else and the windows are in, you're like, oh, this kind of feels small, and you don't really know where the walls are or the rooms are, so you think, oh, it's small again. The drywall goes on, it feels big.
Yeah, it's framed. You've got this big opening for a window, and then you
Right.
put a window in, and it breaks it all up into
Right.
smaller spaces. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's an emotional roller coaster if you're not used to it as the customer.
Right.
Kind of just like, it's constantly changing. So drywall goes in.
You need to have the trim and the interior doors ordered.
Yeah.
At that point, you need to have the kitchen has to have been ordered.
Yep.
Maybe appliances if you're getting anything with a long lead time.
Mm-hmm.
All those things those boxes need to be checked before you're at that stage.
And drywall can go pretty quick,
Mm-hmm.
which is fun. And then I think at that point is when it starts to slow, and I think people can get a little antsy, because now you're tiling the showers.
Tiling, hardwoods going in,
Yeah.
stair railings,
Right.
doors are getting
Right.
hung.
Right.
My mom used to call it the frosting.
Yeah.
You're putting the finish on.
Yeah.
And all the crown moldings.
Yeah, it's going in.
Or the wall treatments, or
Yep.
mantles are being built.
Yep.
And things like that.
But yeah, so I think when the trim and then the hardwood goes in, that's probably good. But then there's that point where, the painters are coming in and now they're prepping everything, and it's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Like, well, we've got to prep all these nail holes, and then we got to sand everything, and that's weeks maybe, and then it's then it's painted, but then it needs 3 coats, so there's not a lot of visual changes.
Yep.
Where people are, what are you guys doing? Don't worry about it. We're working.
And there's that dance between the painters and the trimmers.
Right.
That goes on. And
They get all pissed
I
off.
always, my painters would get a little frustrated. They wanted it done.
Right.
And we just don't have that time. You got to get in there. You got to prime everything. You got to get it set. And depending on some of the finishes, you got to have that wall done.
Yeah.
And, but it was always a dance. And I used to do a lot of the trim in my own houses, and they'd get frustrated.
Oh yeah.
I
I
just
can't
work
work
through it.
in here.
I'd have to buy lunch once a
Yeah.
week.
I'm not working here. There's too much dust.
Yeah.
You're like, listen, I'm down the hallway.
You got the whole other end of the house.
Yeah.
Go over
Settle
there.
down, settle down. But it is true. I mean, a good painter doesn't want any dust. They want those, they're
Yep.
sanding in between coats. It's all those little nuances. I mean, I think a lot of guys are spraying a lot of stuff, but the good guys are back rolling the final coat.
Definitely. And the trim too. I've had guys that used to spray the trim, but the materials have gotten to a good quality paint will lay down super flat these days.
Yeah.
So the guys going around, if the trim is like a 1x4 or something like that material, they go around with the 6-inch roller, a small low nap, and that just lays down like glass.
It's nice. And I like it. You don't necessarily, when you spray, it's tough to replicate that as the final finish. So if the homeowner wants to come in or you have to do some touch-ups or something, it's miserable.
Yeah.
Because you can't replicate the spray.
And go with a flat paint on the walls, please.
Yeah.
Don't do eggshell. Don't do satin.
Unless you're doing a full skim coat of level 4, what is it? Level 4, level 5? Yeah. Unless you're doing that, because you get these clients that want some sort of a gloss, and then they're beating you up that the drywall's not finished. Well, you bought a level 3.
Yeah.
You're gonna see it when you put some sort of a semi gloss on your walls.
Yeah. I had one of my recent builders in a house last year. It was a custom house. He picked it up from another builder, and one of their bathrooms was black. It was black satin. It had like a shiplap up halfway, but the upper half and the ceiling were black satin. It showed everything.
Yeah.
And they couldn't understand why it should cost more. There's a lot more prep in there. You got a level 5 finish versus a level 3 and sheetrock, and people just don't understand what that means. But
and that could be even a different contractor too, because
absolutely,
like the some of these drywall guys, they do a real nice job, but they don't have
their
the
best
equipment.
finish is level 3.
Right.
Yeah.
They might not even have the equipment to do.
Same thing with a trim contractor.
Right.
If you're doing something with wood that's going to be painted and filled with putty and stuff, that is one contractor. Somebody who's doing something in natural wood that you can't fill, you can't, you got to plug it.
It's got to be perfect.
It's got to be
perfect. Yeah. That I think that really ties it back to the beginning, making sure that if you're going to do all custom mill work in your in the house, that's all going to be a stain grade. You better your builder better be familiar with that and have the crews, even the supply chain.
Right.
Because that's not, custom mill work's a whole other ball game. So we're painting, we've installed the flooring. Now, I mean your kitchen, your bathroom.
Yep. Tiles going in.
Yep.
Tiles getting finished. Vanities and kitchen cabinets are showing up.
Yep.
Cabinets go in. Everything gets laid out, leveled out.
Yep.
Countertop gets ordered. They come out. They template.
Yep.
Sink tops, all of that.
Starting to really come together, but sometimes it's kind of in phases. You got, because that's the thing, because the carpenters still have to install the cabinets, and you hope that the painters are kind of working. The trim carpenters have finished the bedrooms or the second floor, and they're painting. So now it's you got a lot of crews there usually. The carpenters are still finishing up. They've got the tile guys might be there.
Right. And then everyone else has to come back in.
Right.
The plumber, the electrician, the HVAC guy. Yep. They're setting grills. They're setting light fixtures, plug switches, bath fixtures.
And I think people need to understand at that point, there's a polishing phase of towards the end, right? Where we've semi-finished the home, but it's not done yet.
Right.
And there's workers in there, and they brought in Johnny, that's a freaking Yahoo, and he's got his pouch on, and he's banging into all of and the painters are hating him, but there is I love it when the customer comes in, they're freaking out. Oh, it doesn't look right. The painters.
We're 2 weeks away from closing.
Yeah.
You're not going to make it.
Right.
There's 30 people in the house.
Yeah.
And in the yard.
Right.
We're going to make it.
Yeah. And there's going to be that remaining, really kind of tightening everything up. The painters are going to go up. They might have to tighten out some of their cut in lines. There's going to be all the appliance. There might be protection on a lot of things that need to be peeled off. I think when we do estimates and stuff, I've really added the punch list. We add like a couple days based off of how much money is going to be spent on the project,
right? Because
of those things. And I think inexperienced builders don't know how much time that takes,
right?
The peeling the protectant off of the windows, because everything has protectant now,
right? And mistakes are going to happen,
right?
You're going to be taking plastic off, and the tape, however rated it, paint safe, it's going to peel something off.
Right.
Painter's got to come back the last time.
Yeah.
You may have a fixture that you realize is dripping.
Yeah.
Plumber's going to have to come back. Everyone's got to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the key thing.
And my list, and I'm sure yours too, is always longer than the homeowners.
Yeah. And you want that. The builders should always have see way more than the homeowner. But, and don't freak out when this stuff is happening.
No.
Like, why, it wasn't a bad job why this breaker keeps, tripping, or the toilet's leaking, or the door's not closing properly.
It's a complex device.
Yes.
A house is complex.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on.
Right.
And they all have to work perfectly.
Right. And what happens is like, as the workers, they're going in, they're getting the main stuff done. And what I always say is like there's 10% that gets missed. or 5% that gets missed. It's that door that's always open, and then the minute the homeowner walks in, closes the door, and realizes there's a missing piece of trim.
Yeah.
But we've been in the home the whole time, and it never happened. And a good builder will make sure they're doing that. They're looking in, you look in the closets, look around the edge. Oh, there's a missing piece in there, But that's normal. Is not reflectant that the builder did a bad job or anything is bad quality. It is normal to have bad things happen at the very end. Somebody broke the window. Sorry, we're going to get a new sash made, and we'll have it here in 3 weeks. You're going to have to maybe move in with a broken window.
Right.
Or, you get somebody putting that double oven in, and they grab it by the handle, and they break the front glass. You're laughing because it probably happened. It's happened.
I'm laughing because the oven for our own house,
Right.
I dropped it moving it in.
Yeah.
And had to order a door.
Right. It's all of these little things. So don't think, you're going to move in. Everybody's agreed on a date.
Yep.
Don't have sold your other house and you have everything in a moving truck. Give yourself some
Excellent
time.
advice.
Yeah. Give yourself some time because everybody has good intentions, but things are going to happen.
Yeah, and meanwhile, all that is going on.
Right.
The builder is running around getting sign-offs from every department in town.
Right.
The assessor has to sign off on it. The tax office has to sign off on it. Health, zoning, building. Everyone's got to. You've got to get a water test.
Right.
You've got to have a permit to discharge for your septic. Everyone's got to sign off on it. The town engineer has to, in some towns, has to come out and make sure that the driveway meets grade. Your surveyor has to come back out, make sure everything's located where it is. You get an as-built.
Yep.
So all of that is going on in the background.
Right.
While.
And these are all people from the town that, if depending on when you're finishing, could be very busy, or they could just be on vacation. Because a lot of these small towns, everybody disappears randomly.
And a good builder, I would pick up the permit.
Right.
And in that package is the sign-off sheet.
Right.
I'd go right over to the assessor's office and zoning, and assessor and tax, and I'd have them sign it right there.
Right.
And as you finish, the septic is in. You get it inspected.
Right.
Surveyor comes out. He locates the foundation. You get an as-built for the septic and the well at the same time. Bring that to health. Get the sign-off from health.
Yeah.
Get the permit to discharge.
Yeah.
Don't be waiting till the last 2 weeks.
Right. Little nuances that ties us all the way back to, is the builder know what they're doing?
Right.
And are they good? And are you given, are they making enough money to be able to be relaxed? Yeah. That's the other side of things. If they're not, if the builder's not making enough money, so they're trying to do too many houses at once.
Yeah. Is the builder strapped out? Did the tax bill not get paid?
Right.
Or was he planning on having that paid off at the closing? Well, you're not going to get the sign off from the tax office if it's not paid.
Right. So, and then you have the building inspection. They're coming in and making sure, and they're going to find stuff too at that point.
Yep.
Hey, this CI didn't work.
Yep.
Or the plumber just set up that trap wrong. Again, we all have our relationship. You have your relationships with these contractors, and the guys that you have are good, but they have to hire new people too. And that person could get in. So again, don't, when things are done wrong and you had a failure for an inspection, that it's not bad for the builder.
No,
it's not.
It's a learning experience.
It's not like it's a negative that they did things wrong. The building inspector's great. They're coming in to double check. It's a second set of eyes, and it could have just been, a new employee on site that went and did that one little thing wrong, and that needs to be fixed. And that's why we're all in this business, to make sure, we're all looking out, along with the building officials coming in and double checking everybody.
And code's a minimum standard.
Right.
You're building a house to code. That's the minimum standard. You have to be building a little bit better or a lot better than that, depending on the case.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the minimum standards that's, I think it's the HBRA has for, it is good. We haven't really had to use it, but we will bring it in and show a client if they're really out to lunch, and just be like, based off of this, we're way above these guidelines, but you can't take a work light and stand up next to the drywall and show me an imperfection.
Right.
You got to be 10 feet away, and it's got to be natural light. And if you can see it, then there's a problem.
Right.
So with all of those guidelines,
reasonable
too,
expectations.
yeah. Like we obviously want to be able to have it look really nice, but so we're at the very end. That is a good point. There's a lot of town sign-offs, huh?
Yeah.
At the very end, making sure the big thing, right? It's habitable.
Right. And the bank is going to want that. They're
Right.
going to want to see.
They want to know if they can.
That goes into the final appraisal.
Right.
That the house can be occupied. They're not
Right.
going to loan money on a house that can't be occupied.
Right. Yeah, they need to know if they take it back from you that they can sell it. So again, probably, don't have the truck waiting to move in. Give yourself some time, and don't force that. The last thing you're moving stuff in the work still. Well, we're not living there. No. Don't move your junk in while the workers are still there.
Yeah,
and
we'll just put it in the garage. No, don't do that.
No. Don't.
Building official doesn't want to see that.
Right. They're gonna get cranky.
Yep.
Because it's their liability. So you've got everything's signed off. Then what typically, what to expect in the next 3 months once you've moved in?
There are going to be hiccups. I used to tell the buyers every closing, put a pad by the phone.
Yeah.
And if you see something, write it down.
Yeah.
Don't call me that day.
Right.
You get a list. I mean, if it's an emergency, absolutely,
Right.
give me a call.
Right.
But if something's dripping or a light switch doesn't work,
right.
But get a list.
Mm-hmm.
When you get a bunch of items, 10 items, if there is 10 items,
right.
then call me.
Yeah. We'll send somebody out. We'll get
Send it over. Shoot me an email. Send me the list.
Yep.
And I'll get guys on it.
Yep. And it's normal.
Yeah.
It's normal. People need to understand that it's normal. Like, you have just constructed an entire house, and there's going to be some things that, and then at the same time is that, depending on the year,
mm-hmm.
the time of year, the lumber that's coming in, some of the stuff's drying out.
Right.
Now that now it's a different season, or you've got the heating system and the cooling system on full blast for a few months now.
Yep.
And you hopefully you've got that stuff running while you're finishing the house, because you need to do that to get your paints to dry and all that stuff. But still, your lumber's still kind of drying out. Maybe
right.
the lumber yard gave you a bunch that stuff was wet.
Yeah.
And that stuff's starting to dry. And now people are losing their mind because there's a nail pop. Right?
There are going to be nail pops.
There's going to be nail pops. There's going to
just like concrete. You're going to see cracks.
Right. Exactly.
There's a crack in the garage. Well,
right.
We put an expansion joint. It just didn't happen to fall.
Yeah. And that's not because it wasn't done right.
No.
That big header that was, and we're using a lot more of engineered stuff.
Right.
That does. But big headers are going to shrink.
Yep.
Could shrink down a 1/4 inch or so. And now you have these cracks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the house is falling. No, it's not falling down. It's just shrinking. It's kind of, it's working itself in.
Yep.
Come
back
back
before we used to use 2x10s for floor joists.
Right.
You could see, the floor joist when it comes into the house is going to be 9 7/8 inches.
Mm-hmm.
In the first year, it's going to go to like 9 1/8.
Right. That's crazy.
Maybe 9 1/4.
That's crazy.
You have 2 floors of that. You're going to see it in the stairwell.
Right.
You're going to see where the sheetrock, because the sheetrock doesn't change in size.
Right.
But you're going to see where it bows out.
Right.
In a stairwell.
Yep.
And the rule has to be you can't be sending people back for every time you see a nail pop.
Right.
Or a crack or something like that.
Yep.
We're going to come back once.
Right.
You can decide if it's a month into ownership
mm-hmm.
or the end of the year.
Yeah.
I'd suggest the end of the year.
Yep.
And we'll come back once. I'll have the painter come in. He'll patch everything.
Yep.
He'll repaint it. He'll caulk it. Everything will be nice.
Yep.
You're done. We're done.
Yep. Key. It's key. I mean, it goes back again to framing too, though. Like the good framer, and the new engineered stuff is solved. A lot of this, but
a lot of those headaches, yeah.
But citing all of your floor joists and making sure that, you've crowned all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's gonna, create, so when it does shrink, it's not as drastic.
Mm-hmm. Driveway's a similar thing. We tell
Right.
people, don't pave the driveway in the first year.
Right.
Let it settle.
Yeah.
You're going to get some settling where the utilities go underground.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get settling around the well.
Yep.
Around the septic tank. You're going to see, if it wasn't compacted properly around the septic tank,
Right.
you'll see the layout of it. Just let it go.
Yep. No, you're going to need a few, couple of dump trucks of topsoil.
Yep.
Kind of fill it back in. I think that's a really good tip. Don't do your landscaping for a year, then bring it in.
Well, you can do the landscaping,
Right.
but just realize you may end up with a low spot at the
Right. Different areas.
foundation.
Yeah.
Once everything settles in.
Right. The other thing I think is what we see and Schluter's just come up with some great trim pieces, but you have the countertop to the backsplash is that grout tends to kind of,
it's always going to crack.
It's going to crack. And so Schluter's come up with this like little trim piece that you come in, so it becomes more of a mechanical. You don't grout it.
Okay.
And so now you can rides the, it decouples the tile with the countertop, so
Okay.
it never, you don't have that issue. So very cool. I mean, because I think that's probably, we do a lot of kitchens, and that's pretty much, we know that's going to be a callback.
Yeah.
Hey, it's cracking. They come up with some better, caulks that are the same. But I think this is, caulk.
Yeah, same thing if you have like a fiberglass tub or
Right.
something like that, and where the floor meets it, you're going to have a caulk joint there.
Yeah. So after that year, just know you're going to have, because we have people calling back like we did the bad job, and it's just like, no, your stuff is good. Like everything was done properly. Because we know our guys, and this is kind of normal.
Yep.
So that's the full. So then you're moving in. I think, probably, another recommendation would be to, register your appliances. You want to think about, do most builders, do you think, have their mechanical guys, do they do services? Or a lot of times new construction mechanicals are just installers, and
Right.
they're not a service company.
Right. They don't want to come back.
Right.
So sign up with your oil company to get your boiler
Yep.
or your HVAC, your air handler serviced.
Right.
Realize that you're going to have to. It got to the point where I would just order extra air filters and leave them there.
Yep.
Every time the season changed, change that filter.
Yeah.
Do simple things, make it a little easier for them because they're not going to do it.
Yeah. That's a good builder right there. Here's a stack of air filters. It's going to last you a couple of years, or at least a year.
Yeah.
And then you even know that they exist.
Right.
Because people like,
And
where's
we
my
would
air
change
filter?
it. We would change it right when
right.
right at the closing because if the floors got sanded in the air and the heat was on, it drew in everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you blow out the ducts, you clean before the vents go in, and change that filter.
And I think like good builders are going to bring in a cleaning company, a construction cleaning company to really get it polished. But if there maybe plan that too. Maybe get a because there's construction cleaning companies, and then there's house cleaning.
Right.
And they're gonna polish the stainless steel. They're gonna do all of that stuff that maybe obviously depending on the builder. But don't we do a little disclaimer when we remodel, like we're gonna clean up.
Right.
But if you have your cleaner, know the cleaner's gonna have to come in and spend a little extra time. But the expectations is you shouldn't open the drawer and have a bunch of sawdust in the cabinets.
Screws.
Yeah, the screws, leftover candy wrappers.
Yep.
It happens, but hopefully, I know the big builders like Toll Brothers and stuff. They have, it's like a 400 line checklist for a home.
Yeah.
Where they go in and
and their contracts with their contractors
ridiculous,
are extensive,
extensive,
and you're responsible for
Yeah.
anything you bring in and
Right.
everything that goes out.
And they give tickets.
Yep.
They're like, here's a ticket off of, you get
Back charged.
for
Yep.
everything. I mean, they got to be doing something right. So there it is. I mean, there's the whole home process, start to finish. It's just a snapshot. I mean, it's, think about it. It's what's the typical home in production once we're ready, once you've got the foundation dug.
From permit to CO, like a 3,000 square foot house today, 10, 12 months.
Yeah, so 10, 12 months, and we kind of got that, we wrapped that up in an hour. So there's a lot more nuances of all that. And I think people need to know need to understand the process.
Right.
Trust the builder.
Yes.
Find somebody that you can trust. The last thing you want to do is be in a relationship where you're looking over the builder's shoulder and he doesn't like that or she doesn't like that at all. That's a terrible relationship. You need to be able to trust that you're going to get to the end. And it's going to be a 12-month process.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about you have to find the land and get the plans and get all of that stuff. This is just the production side of things. But do it.
Yep.
Don't be scared of it. There is good guys that are out there building, and if you have the time, there's lenders now really pushing for this too. I mean, we've had a couple on the podcast that are like, hey, we're trying, we're opening up these additional, products because we got to, we know there's demand.
There isn't enough business out there.
Right.
They've got to have it.
Exactly.
They've got to drive business.
Right. So there's lenders out there that anybody can afford a new construction. There's builders out there that want to do it. There's real estate agents that understand all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid of it, but don't think you're doing it in 2 months and don't, and understand it's expensive.
Right.
You're seeing that it's like $325 a square foot for a builder. You think it's higher? I think it's got to be higher.
It's higher.
It's got to be higher.
Yeah.
Because we did a poll. We went through ecstatically for remodeling, and remodeling's way more expensive.
Right.
Just because I've got to produce something with an existing house with existing everything, and we can't just bring in the big excavators and do. We've got to like tiptoe through the tulips.
You're rebuilding an engine while the car is driving.
Right, and the people are all peeping around, and it's nonsense. But we're at 500 square minimum for an addition, and I'm like I remember when it was like 200. I'm like it's hard for me to sell it because I'm like, wow, 500 square, like we're gonna put an addition on your home that's gonna cost more than the entire home itself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at like if they haven't talked to any other reputable companies, they're screaming at you because they think you're ripping them off.
You're not.
And you're like, I don't know how. I mean, I'm trying to eke out 8-9% over here, and I'm barely doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not making any money.
You have to be profitable.
Yeah, you want a company to be profitable.
And everyone who leaves the job has to be profitable.
Everybody has to make money, and I think people have to understand that because if they don't make money, they can't do their job.
Right.
They can't pay their mortgage.
Right.
So if they can't pay their mortgage, they're not going to come up, and if the builder can't pay his guys, they're not going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And if no one's making enough money, they're going to cut corners.
Right.
It's a lot. It's a lot for people to understand, but I think it's a really good, go out, call you, get a piece of property, have you guide you to who the builders are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, better than most. We're equipped to handle new construction.
Right.
We're building the model to solve that. And from a builder's standpoint too.
Right.
We're getting ahead of the curve. We're finding the land.
Yep.
We're setting up financing.
Right.
So someone who's been working with a bank and it takes 6 months to get a loan and all these things, they want you to escrow money to start and everything else. I can get you money in a week.
Yeah. Listen, everybody wants to give money away right now. They can't make any, it's so tight right now.
Yep.
Banks are asking, please take my money. So money's not a problem. I don't really think. Do you think land is a problem? I don't. I think it's it's tight.
Good lots are hard to find.
Yeah.
We chewed them all up 20 years ago.
Yeah. So you might have to spend a little bit more time, but I think, well, I know, like, towns are starting to have to relook their zoning laws, at their own zoning laws. I know, like, some of the new ADU, legislations came. I think only a third of the towns said yes to the blanket statement that the state put out.
Is it that low?
Yeah.
Wow.
But the other 2/3 are like, I think another third is like, yeah, well, that's fine, but.
Right.
And then the other third is like, well, let me think about it. You know, it's no one wants it in their backyard. So, and the more affluent towns are like, we're just going to sue you. So, we get enough.
I'm on zoning in Roxbury, and we already had accessory dwelling units or accessory apartments in our zoning regulations. So it wasn't a big jump for us to meet the state requirements.
Right.
But I know other towns have said no. And when they do that, they jeopardize any kind of state funding.
Right.
So,
but it also doesn't solve a problem. Like, I think there's an aging in place issue. Like, baby boomers are trying to retire, trying to figure it out.
I think it's a great use of space. Yeah.
Totally. And honestly, it could be, it can be can be standalone, apartments in the backyard and it's new construction build. It's just a little smaller than the normal house.
Maintains the character of the town.
Right. Yeah.
And also the zoning changes you said, they're doing conservation developments where it's maybe smaller lots and a larger portion gets donated to the land trust or something.
Yeah.
Or cluster housing. So the impact on the community is lower.
Right.
And you have a lot more open space. People seem to prefer that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, Chris, that was an awesome. I mean, we just cranked out almost 2 hours of
Did we really?
new construction, start to finish. Call Chris if you got you're thinking about jumping into this game, but just do it. Listen, if you're with the right team, you can solve anything.
Yep.
And you can find it. And honestly, if you want a new home, that's the only way you're going to do it. You're not buying new homes out there.
You get exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Every dollar goes to something you want.
Yeah.
So.
And you can pick the little nuances, and it's your home.
A lot fewer compromises.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Chris, anything else? Anything else you want to tell? Talk to say, or was
That's it.
I think we kind of covered everything. Yeah. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was good. We kind of I want to say.